Welcome to Authentic with Brazil 201. I'm your host, Brazil 201. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about who or what is responsible for the quote unquote woke apparatus that is in the Democratic Party. Now, if you're looking at this on Spotify or YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, the image you're seeing of this episode of the podcast is basically the stereotype of what we hear when we think of a woke person, right? This person, and you will see this caricature, and they come in various forms, right? It is the person in this photo. By the way, this is an AI generated image, so this is not a real person, but you've seen the caricature of this person at AOC rallies, Zoran rallies, Pod Save America live events, Hassan Piker streams, Brianna Joy Gray things. They post, look at your stereotypical like young event under 25. They're all over college campuses. We have the the shaved head variant. We have the Kara Swisher haircut variant, and we have this variant. And it's not just women, it's men and non-binary, but you understand the caricature of what people mean by like the annoying woke person. You see it in a lot of television shows as well. Especially I think like in the first episode of Hacks this season, you saw like their writer's room where they had their like performative diversity thing, and there was amazingly this type of character. But what I want to talk about is let's stop pretending this is complicated. First, with the word woke. Okay, when normal people say woke, the average person, they're not talking about this history or academic definitions because woke means performative activism, at least when I use it. And they're talking about the nonsense that has invaded their corporate America, the things they experience in daily lives. And a lot like, here's a good thing. If you look at like the Pod Save America Reddit or any like kind of ultra liberal Reddit, you'll see those people who truly believe in this nonsense, right? And they get mad that normal people don't like it. And and we all talk about like the anti-racist bias HR trainings, pronoun introductions in meetings, land acknowledgments before events, paper straws that fall apart in minutes, plastic bag bans, body positivity messaging that was nonsense and has faded with the rise of drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy, composting rules that are all performative because guess what? It all ends in the same landfill. This is what the normal people mean, right? And they go and they're trying like, and people are like, who is responsible for that? And I just want to say, I don't know if it's random activists yelling online. I know it's not the average Democratic voter who is pushing for this nonsense. I don't even think it was like the Democratic Party that created this at the core. I think the real answer is like much more specific and probably much more uncomfortable. I think it's the managerial class that created this. The biggest driver, like what people call woke culture, is like this managerial class. They think of like the HR departments, corporate compliance teams, university administrations, nonprofit staffers, and diversity consultants, right? These are people who design these stupid trainings, enforce the language, and set the rules inside the institutions. They're not elected and they're not accountable to voters, but they shape how millions of people are expected to behave at work and school and increasingly in public life. And that spreads out through television and culture and begins to inseminate in their lives, right? And this is why so many people see like Democrats feel like an HR department. And it's not just an insult, it's a description of where culturally it's coming from. Now, with Trump's win, a lot of this performative nonsense was thrown away immediately. The DEI stuff, these stupid HR trainings, the composting, all of this that no one really believed in, all went away when Trump won, right? And the only people who are mad that all this like went away is the people who truly believed in the bullshit. But I want like, how did it spread? The pipeline is simple and repeatable, right? An idea starts in elite spaces like NYU or Columbia, various high universities, nonprofits, and consulting circles. It got picked up by corporate leadership and HR departments. It turns into policy training or internal expectations. Then it becomes mandatory for employees, students, or anyone inside that system. And by the time normal people encounter it, it's no longer a suggestion. It is a rule. This is why it feels forced, because it is. Where like the Democratic Party fits into this nonsense. The Democratic Party did not sit down and invent pronoun circles or land acknowledgments. Now, do they do these at their stupid DNC meetings? And then everybody's like, oh my God, the cringe. Who wants this bullshit? Of course. But what they did is absorb the culture and repeat its language. Why? Because their coalition is increasingly overlaps with people producing it. College educated professionals, nonprofit workers, media figures, and institutional elites are now a core part of the democratic ecosystem. So instead of setting boundaries, the party accommodates it. It signals alignment, it avoids confrontation, and when things go too far, it tends to mumble rather than draw a clear line. That is not control, that is the drift. The overrated explanations, right? Some popular explanations sound satisfying, but do not actually hold up. Blaming small activist groups miss the point, and they can influence language, but they do not control institutions. Blaming media consumers or podcast listeners gets it backwards. They reflect the culture, they did not create it. Blaming the party alone ignores the fact that most of this is happening outside formal politics entirely. This enforcement mechanism is not elections, it is employment. And why people react so strongly. The backlash is not random. Okay. People react to this culture because of how it showed up in our lives. It's mandatory instead of optional, right? It replaces normal conversation with this scripted language. It turns everyday interactions with these annoying subtle moral tests. It is enforced by people you never voted for and cannot push back on. Even people who broadly agree with this nonsense and the underlying values often find the delivery grating, artificial, and condescending. The gap is where this anger lives. Now, the real answer, if you want one clean line, it is this. The woke culture that people complain about is not coming from voters and probably not even primarily from politicians, with the exception of like AOZ and Zoran and other like squad adjacent members, is coming from a managerial class that turns social ideas into institutional rules and a Democratic Party that has chosen to accommodate it rather than challenge it. Because let me tell you, at any GOP Republican thing, you will not see a fucking land acknowledgement or whatever special month for whatever diversity group is, or pronoun check-ins or safe spaces, or here's how you recycle. This goes into this thing, and remember to compost and all this other bullshit that nobody fucking enjoys. But the political problem is no one wants to say this out loud. Republicans run against the symptoms. Democrats defend, ignore, or awkwardly justify them. Meanwhile, the actual source of the culture, the institutional layer inside corporations and universities and nonprofits, keeps expanding without meaningful pushback. So the cycle is endlessly repeating and continuing. We seem to be right now speed running through like woke 2 or 3.0. We are blasting through before, like, people got mad if you said retard, and we're speeding through that, and now we're like in some crazy new version of Me Too, but that era is already kind of going by because like you saw with like the Daniel Bliss primary with the blonde with the bad hair. Like, oh, he hooked up with this chick 20 years ago when he was 26 and she was 24, but she regrets it. So suddenly that's a Me Too thing, and people just don't care about that bullshit anymore. So they're just kind of going through the motions of what like woke thing we can do from 2019 to 2021. But voters are just not reacting to policy anymore. They're reacting to an entire cultural experience that comes attached to one side of the political spectrum. And until someone is willingly to confront that directly, nothing about that dynamic is ever going to change.